Jesus and his promise, it talks about we get to the righteousness that reigns in life. Because of Jesus and his promise to reconcile us with God the Father, we have a very different image of what happens after death. It's not just this one dark grave place where we all go, but actually there's heaven, and there's joy, and there's a perfect relationship with God. And the Jewish people of the Old Testament had David as their righteous image, or somebody who was a really good example for them, which David was amazing. But David was also a lust-filled murderer. And that was their image of, wow, this is a really righteous, really good version of a person. And then because of Jesus' life, we get something completely different. We get an entirely different image of righteousness that we get to try and imitate. We get to ask ourselves throughout the day, what would Jesus do in this situation? And know that there's a better way of living life. Because of Jesus, every aspect of life has changed. Every part of our lives has changed. And I think in realizing that, I noticed for the first time that the Bible was a metaphor for each of our lives, which is, I think maybe many people have already noticed that, and it's taken me a while to realize. But I just thought it was so amazing how the Bible was this metaphor for our lives, in that it starts in a garden where we have relationship with God, and then there's the first sin. And then we have chapters and chapters and books and books and books of people trying to do life with God, without God, and trying to do things their own way, and it just going horribly, horribly wrong. And then Jesus comes and intervenes, and he creates an entirely new way that we can live. And then the letters in the gospel, in the New Testament, are all about the disciples and the apostles and the church trying to imitate Christ and trying to be like him and trying to be better versions of themselves. And then finally at the end in Revelation, it's about this reconciled relationship between God and creation. And I was looking at it and I was like, oh my goodness, that's my life. Because I also started as an image of God in relationship with him. And then I did lots of stupid things as a kid. Those were my original sin, my fall. And then I tried to live my life without God until Jesus came and he intervened in my life. And then now I'm living in the letters bit where I'm trying to imitate him. And then one day when I die, I'll be reconciled in perfect relationship with God. And it was so amazing for me this first time realizing that I could see my life in the overview of the Bible. And it made me so excited. I went and told so many different people about it because I was like, this is so cool. Look at this. Like, you can see your life in the Bible. You can see your entire life plan. And it just made it so much more relevant to me that sharing the gospel isn't just, well, it's never just because it's an amazing, it's an amazing, amazing, amazing thing. But sharing the gospel didn't need to be, and then, Abraham did this, and then the ancient Israelites went over through the Jordan, and then they built a giant rock, and then they did this and that, and trying to fill people in on all of the history so that they understand the relevance. But I can say, no, actually, you know how you're living a life where you're struggling with all of these different things, and there's darkness, and there's sadness, and there's hurt, and there's pain. Well, not only you are going through that, an entire nation went through that, I went through that, the people around you have gone through that, and the way that we get out of it is by allowing Christ's intervention to start a process of us imitating him and building relationship with him and building relationship with God. And I know that that's probably a very simple realization, but for me it was just absolutely blew my mind. And so I wanted to share it again today, just the relevance of the gospel, not only for our lives, because I'm sure many of us have already had that realization or are busy living that, but also for what we can share with others. Because it's an exciting truth. The gospel is so exciting. And why would we not want to share it with other people when that is what it is? It's that there's a way out of the dark things that are going on in our lives. There's something better that's waiting for us. We don't have to live in sin and in death like what the scripture's talking about with what came after Adam's sin. We don't need to live in death, but instead, because of Jesus and what he's done, we get to live in this life and life abundant that he's promised us. We get to have the fruits of the Spirit, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, all of these things that we are trying to grasp onto in our day-to-day life. We get to just have the fullness of it when we have it with Jesus. And that just made me that just made me so excited. And so I wanted to share that. And yeah, because it's an all-age service, we do try to keep things a bit shorter. So I've got an activity for us to do where we're going to be making bracelets like this. I've kind of made mine very small. I promise it does actually fit on somebody's wrist. There we go. We're going to be making bracelets. I'm sure many people have seen these kinds of bracelets. They're the salvation bracelets. And it tells the story of the Bible on it so that it's easier for you. No, Zoe was trying to guess what flag I was making earlier. But it tells the story of the gospel so that you can hold on to it, but you can also tell other people about it. And so I've got some kits at the front here who I've got some young people are going to help me hand that out in a minute. But while we're making the bracelets, I would just love for you to reflect on what does that gospel message mean to you? And also, once you've reflected, if you would like to share with the person next to you what your story is, or where on the bracelet you are, where in the gospel story you've landed, and how that's going for you. Yeah, so that's what we're going to do next. I will explain the order to put them in and how to make it in a second, but we've got some young people who are going to come and help me hand out the